Steve Drew is just dialed in. So we
have
have a quorum. Supervisor Babbitt has said that he intends to arrive. It might be 10:15. So by the time he gets here, and I believe Supervisor Ryan will be here.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the Metro Plan of Greater Flagstaff Executive Board meeting. Today is June 3rd, 2020. It's approximately 10 o'clock. Can we please have roll call?
Yes. Coral Edens.
Present.
Charlie Odegaard.
Present.
Jesse Thompson. Jesse Thompson, I see him.
Looks like he is off the screen now. Here he is.
I see him. I'm going to mark him as present. Maybe he is muted. Matt Ryan excused. Art Babbitt is not present, but I'll make a note when he arrives. Jim McCarthy.
Here.
Steve Peru.
Present.
Regina Salas.
Present.
Jeff Mildeck. Or staff.
Present.
Dave Wessel.
Here.
And Rosie Ware present. And then who else do we have on the phone? We have Kevin Adam.
Yes. Hello.
And Brandon Kavanaugh.
Hello.
Is there anyone that I missed?
Rosie, actually, Dave, I have a request. Could you send the phone number for dialing in to Supervisor Thompson in case he's unable to resolve the sound issues on his computer?
Yes, it's been sent to him.
Thank you.
Chair Evans, this concludes our roll call.
Okay. So can we start with our preliminary, I'm sorry. Let's go down to public comment. Is there any public comment at this time? Not seeing any, we'll go ahead and go to the approval of minutes. These would be the minutes of our regular meeting, which was held on May 6, 2020.
Mayor, could I make a motion? Jim McCarthy.
Please.
First of all, I want to thank Rosie Ware for reviewing the comments that I made over email and incorporating resolution to those. So I would like to move that the minutes of the regular meeting of May 6, 2020, the version that was sent out, I believe it was on Monday from Rosie, that we approve those minutes.
Is there a second?
Madam Chair, this is Steve Peru. I'll make the second.
There's been a motion made by Mr. McCarthy with a second by Mr. Peru to approve our minutes from our May 2020 meeting. Is there any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We are now down to, I don't see anything for our consent agenda. We're going to go ahead and move down to general business. First up on general business would be this is our TIP, our 2021 to 2025 review and adoption. We are looking at pages 11 through 12. And staff's recommended action is that we approve the 2021 to 2025 TIP program. Mr. Wessel?
I'm off mute. Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. David Wessel, Planning Manager for Metro Plan. As mentioned, the action we are seeking today is adoption of the Transportation Improvement Program for fiscal years 21 through 25. The TIP is one of our mandated documents, federally mandated documents. It's really a capital program used to implement the Regional Transportation Plan. We have gone through a series of public involvement steps, including a call for projects and a public comment period. No input was heard from the general public, but we did receive input from our member agencies, primarily through the submission and incorporation of their respective capital improvement programs. We find that the TIP, as required, is fiscally constrained. It's in line with the revenues projected, and I will put a big caveat on this. We are recommending adoption of the TIP now, in full recognition that I believe all of our member agencies are in a serious review of revenues, and the contents of the TIP may change based on those reviews in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and its economic impacts across the nation, the state, and regionally. In spite of those expected changes, what's recommended by the Technical Advisory Committee to proceed with the adoption of the TIP. And what this does is authorize, once it's approved by ADOT and by the feds, it authorizes the expenditure of federal funds. And I think this is particularly important for Mountain Line, as they have a series of grants almost always in the works, and they've identified a series of prospective grants in their the illustrative fifth year, which is projects that are unfunded. And so having this adopted allows us to be more nimble in responding to opportunities that may come up. And of course, with some of the federal legislation that's been in play, it's really hard to predict if one of those opportunities may come up sooner rather than later, given the pace of things. So there's a link in the staff report to the draft TIP. It has been out on our website for some time now, and we believe it is ready for action. So again, we're recommending adoption of the TIP by the board today. Happy to answer any questions.
Board, are there any questions for Mr. Wessel? Is there a motion?
Mayor, this is Charlie. I move to approve 3A TIP for 20 to 21, or TIP 2021 through 2025 review and adoption. And my motion is to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
And who was that, Mr. Babbitt?
It was. Good morning.
Okay, so good morning. We have a motion by Mr. Odegaard with a second by Mr. Babbitt to go ahead and adopt the TIP for 2021 to 2025. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We're now down to B. This is project prioritization update. This would be pages 13 and 18 in your packet. Staff's recommended action is that we adopt these priorities for Metro Plan. Mr. Milback.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I also want to point out that Dan Acoli, who's on the management committee of Metro Plan and with Northern Arizona University, has just joined the meeting, as has Christopher Tressler, who is with Coconino County and sometimes represents County Manager Jane on the Metro Plan Management Committee. And this report I'm about to give is a report that you saw last month. And in fact, we've revised it and have shared it with the Technical Advisory Committee and most members of the Metro Plan Management Committee. For example, Dan Acoli and I just ran through the presentation yesterday, and Dave Wessel and Chris Tressler ran through it last week. So I want to confirm if you can still see my the staff report up on the screen.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, I am going to switch to a PowerPoint presentation and hope that you can all see that.
I do not believe that.
Is the PowerPoint presentation up yet?
No, your faces.
Yeah, I can't see it.
All right, well, let me correct that.
We can see it.
Excellent.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I needed to get my face off there, and you might have noticed I have a very subtle MetroPlan logo behind my head in the screen. Want to get our full money's worth on the MetroPlan logo. And
Subtle is the right word, Mr. Milback.
subtle might not be the right word. Thank you. I'm going to run through this now. Again, you've seen it before, and it's an update on our project prioritization. And I think there are a couple members who missed the last board meeting. I'm going to run through this quickly. I can't see if hands are raised, so Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, if people have questions and can, if you just slow me down, that would be fine. The key, first of all, why are we doing this? And we really want to answer some basic questions about why MetroPlan exists, what our priorities are, how we can help member agencies. We spent a lot of time getting focused over the past couple of years. And most recently, our strategic work plan identified a 5-year horizon. And I highlighted some of the key words for MetroPlan of multi-jurisdictional and working on projects that community partners perhaps cannot complete on their own, that we want to influence transportation funding, and really we're going for one consolidated voice in the region. We also adopted a measurable objective, which says very specifically, we want to support member agencies by inventorying regional priorities, evaluating all of the projects, and then choosing the top 3 for MetroPlan, and then get clear on what role MetroPlan will play. So as we've gone through this process, you can see check marks by each of the items that we've completed over the past few months. And essentially today, I'm asking the board to adopt these priorities. And just a little background, there are many different types of projects and priorities, and the challenge has always been, so how does MetroPlan fit in? And certainly the individual agency priorities exist. So the city with the Lone Tree Corridor and Mountain Line with the bus rapid transit system, every agency has their own priorities. And then there are some shared ones, Milton and 180 Corridor Management Plan, although it is being led by ADOT, clearly affects everybody in the region. And then there are MetroPlan priorities. Some of these criteria, and I'm hearing some background noise. I don't know if everyone is on mute, perhaps could be. MetroPlan priorities are, we have criteria of serving multi-agencies, being clear when there's a staff need. Other agencies can't do a project, so we may step in, that there's a funding opportunity that MetroPlan can pursue. And also generally as a planning organization, we're looking for a long-term time horizon. And the regional transportation plan is one example, and I'm going to go through the recommendations. As we went through this process, and I know we've always talked about, I know I've always talked about just having 3 priority projects, and it became very difficult just to focus on 3. We could have 3 planning projects, but also identified we might want to have, and I'm recommending we do want to have funding initiatives separate from our planning projects, and I'll go into some detail on those. And of course, just for background, we have some ongoing efforts, support that we provide. we participate in planning efforts of other agencies, and we do ongoing data collection and management. When I say we, I mean Dave, who provides that information to other agencies so that they have the data they need. So the goals here are to adopt project priorities, identify funding initiatives, and get clear on we're going to provide where MetroPlan will provide support. And this table that should be up on your screen is a little bit busy. I give it to you as an overview, and then I'm going to go into some detail. Overall, in the top left, it says where we will have, I'm recommending we have a planning lead role on specific projects. And then where we have a lead in pursuing funding and getting clear on where we are going to be engaged in supporting other agencies in their major planning projects. And then also getting on the calendar some of the routine work that's required of an MPO that we will continue to do. So at this point, this slide lays out over the next 3 years where we will be involved. And I want to go a little deeper on some of the projects. So for example, the Regional Transportation Plan. This is something that is a 20-year time horizon. It benefits all of the members. It is mandated for metropolitan planning organizations to do this work. Dave Wessel has already done 4, if not 5 of these. And funding is available to MetroPlan to do this work. So very clearly, it's a project that needs to stay with us. And then the Lone Tree Traffic Interchange. This is one we've talked about for a long time, so it's probably not a surprise with this board. I will say, as we went through the process with the TAC and the management committee over the past few months, it wasn't entirely clear that this project was going to come to the top. And as we continue through our review process, the reason LTTI comes to the top is very long-term time horizon, that it is multi-agency, that we can leverage potentially funding for other organizations. You know, for 419 and 420 can perhaps be leveraged against this project. And no other agency has staff assigned. So it just seems like, it continues to seem like a good fit for us. And then the next project is West Route 66. This is new, somewhat for MetroPlan to say we want to be involved in. It has a medium-term time horizon. It is multi-agency because it is in many ways the crux of the 180 project and how we manage to increase capacity on Milton. I'm sorry, the Milton project, how we increase capacity on Milton without increasing the capacity on that underpass. So we're hopeful of leveraging support. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I got to back up. I'm confusing projects, so let me just start over. West Route 66, there is opportunity to leverage Proposition 419 and potentially get state support for West Route 66. And there is a staff need because the state of Arizona and the city of Flagstaff, although they have some focus on this project, they need and would benefit from a focus on West Route 66 from Flagstaff Ranch Road to Woodlands. And then the Milton Underpass. And this is also new for something that MetroPlan may be involved in. We haven't identified it as a core project for us in the past, but it came forward through our process of looking at all the projects in the region. And it is somewhat urgent. It may take a long time to get done, but essentially it's the crux of the project on Milton Road. And it impacts the bus rapid transit system and the downtown connection center that Mountain Line is looking at. It clearly includes the BNSF corridor and how we find a way to widen or deal with this project is important. And the thought is that perhaps MetroPlan can provide some support to get this project done. And that concludes the 4 main projects. And I'm going to scroll back up here to the overview of the planning lead of the 4 projects. And before I go into funding pursuit, since I don't have the benefit of body language and seeing if anyone's raising their hand, I want to turn it back over to you, Madam Chair, to see if there are questions or discussion on these planning projects.
Board, are there any questions? We are looking for a motion then.
Well, I need to provide some more information for you, actually. I just was taking a pause before I steamed ahead.
Okay.
All right, I'll steam ahead. Moving on to funding pursuit. One of the things that came forward through our review of all the projects is that it makes sense for MetroPlan to have a role in pursuing funding for bicycle and pedestrian projects. Again, to leverage Proposition 419 and to recognize there is not enough money in Proposition 419, so MetroPlan can perhaps bring more in, and that we have staff capacity to do so. Another project, funding pursuit, is for smart signals. This is higher tech signal synchronization. There is a funding source that other MPOs in the country have pursued. And this is one that Dave is familiar with and has suggested it would benefit really all of the organizations if we could bring funding to bear to improve the signal technology in the area, some of which is becoming obsolete. And then I have federal infrastructure stimulus. This is pretty much a blank slide because the next item on the agenda is to talk about federal infrastructure funding. There's a lot to share on that, but at this point, it does not boil down into a slide. There's a lot still in play. But clearly recommending that MetroPlan be involved in pursuing whatever funding comes forward through the federal government. And then finally, we've got the Build America Bureau. This is one that Dave Wessel has put a lot of time into. This project has to do with low interest loans for the Lone Tree Railroad overpass. The suggestion here is that this is temporary, that we, MetroPlan, are in a place to hand this off to the city to see if the city wants to pursue the low interest loan. Dave has done some additional analysis of the cost and benefit. And as I've heard Councilmember McCarthy say in the past, I think just at the last meeting, recognize that federal funds don't spend well sometimes and the costs go up. And we have to make sure there is actually a benefit in bringing this funding in. And without going into great detail, I will just tell you that Dave has gone into great detail. And I love bringing in federal funds. And I am convinced that it's questionable if this low interest loan will be of benefit to the Lone Tree Railroad overpass. And we're giving that information back to the city. And so the city staff can work with council to decide if they want to move forward. And I'm almost done here, Madam Chair. The next steps really are to request board to adopt this project. And then if you do, we will update the Unified Planning Work Program. That's our document that goes to ADOT describing the work that we are going to do. And that concludes my report.
Okay. So board, are there any questions, comments, discussion? If not,
Madam
could we-
Chair,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Hello.
just one question. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, that's all I want to know. That's all I want to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. If there's no questions or comments, can we have a motion?
This is Jim McCarthy. I move that we adopt the priorities for the Metro Plan as outlined in the packet.
Is there a second?
This is Charlie, and I second that.
So there's a motion made by Ms. McCarthy and a second by Mr. Odegaard to accept and adopt these priorities for Metro Plan as presented. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion does carry. Thank you. We're now down to C. This would be the federal stimulus infrastructure, pages 19 and 32 in our packet. There's no recommendation that is being made at this time. We are being provided with an update on developments regarding current and potential transportation funding. Mr. Malbach.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I also want to recognize that Kevin Adam is here with the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council. I didn't give Kevin an opportunity to speak at the last meeting. I'd like to give a quick update, and then Kevin, I know, is available to provide one as well. Also, I'm aware that you all have many sources of information and you've been watching developments keenly. My staff report provides a summary, and there are a number of attachments that describe the requests and the initial proposals that have gone forward. The process is developing quickly and changing consistently. For example, Peter DeFazio of Oregon released a reauthorization bill today, this morning, called Investing in a New Vision for the Environment and Surface Transportation in America Act. So that comes across with a very catchy acronym of INVEST, the INVEST Act. It's 853 pages. I've only seen highlights so far. And to give you some of those highlights, it's a 5-year bill, basically a reauthorization of the current FAST Act, surface transportation funding. It's $494 billion, and a few items of interest to MPOs. There may be a high-performing MPO clause, and it means that organizations deemed high-performing, like ours and others in the country, we may be able to receive funding directly from the federal government without going through the state. So lots of details on how that might work out, and even if it makes its way through the entire bill. But also in this bill, safety funds have been increased and planning funds are being increased, both of which are things that are very important to Metro Plan. So we'll keep an eye on them. Some things that are consistent from around the country and requests that have come forward in the advocacy role, generally from $20 to $50 billion has been requested for infrastructure. So the states would each get theoretically 20 to 50 billion to be divided, maybe $1 billion per state. There's consistent requests for the reauthorization of the FAST Act to be completed, which means Peter DeFazio's bill is timely and is going to be supported by those advocacy groups. There is some expectation that whatever happens with federal funding, it's certainly, I expect that programs like the Build Grant will receive additional funding. It's just very easy to do that through projects that have been well vetted. I want to point out that Dave, and I want to recognize Dave Wessel in particular, who put a lot of time into resubmitting the Build Grant for 4th Street, and also Stacy Breschler-Nags and the city team in general for getting that project resubmitted this year. So until I saw the bill from Peter DeFazio had come out, the word I got from Bob Holmes, who represents the city as well as NAPTA with federal funding, just as early as last week, he said, it feels like we've somewhat hit the pause button. We're still anticipating some form of additional legislation this summer, but don't know exactly how it's going to play out. And what I will say before answering any questions you might have of me and introducing Kevin Adam is that we will obviously continue to monitor this process and continue our alliances with the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, Transportation Business Partners, National Association of Counties, AASHTO, and others as we all look for increased infrastructure funding. And with that, Madam Chair, when you're ready, I'd like to introduce Kevin Adam.
Board, do we have any comments or questions? Let's go ahead then, Mr. Milback.
Kevin Adam, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Jeff, members, and as Jeff just indicated, very fluid process back in Washington right now. And there is a lot of focus on reauthorization, but at the same time, I think in the more immediate future, we are looking at the next round of COVID-19 relief funding and what role transportation funding will play in that. The HEROES Act was passed by the House, I believe it was about a week and a half ago now. And so and that was about a 3.3 trillion relief package. There was some funding, about 15 billion, that would be directed to the state DOTs to provide relief for lost transportation revenues at the state and local levels. There has been some brushback in the Senate as far as leadership wanting to delay action, and the position by Senate Majority Leader McConnell has been let's slow down on appropriating additional funding and fully implement the CARES Act and see what happens with the assistance that's already been provided. And he's softened that stance a little bit. There have been several members of his caucus, Republican senators, that do support additional funding, and particularly for the infrastructure. And so, and then in addition to that, the president was initially wanting to have a substantial infrastructure a bill coming up, and then and while he's backed off of that a little bit, at the same time, just last week, the Federal Reserve Chairman and the Treasury Secretary both provided testimony on Capitol Hill indicating that they believe additional revenue is going to need to be infused into the economy relatively soon. So I think that while we don't know exactly how this is going to play out, there is a strong possibility that within the month we will see another relief package. It more than likely will include transportation. The bigger question is going to be, is this next relief package more relief oriented, or if it's more recovery related? And what I mean by that is, if it's relief, it's probably going to be a relatively smaller amount of funding that would be directed at holding states and locals harmless and make up for the lost revenues that you're incurring back at the state. If it's more recovery related, it will be far more substantial, and we'll be looking at using that as a tool for generating jobs and keeping the construction industry up and running, and potentially expanding to help with the job losses that we have incurred nationwide. So a lot of moving parts there. Another part of this, and I'll end on this, is that because reauthorization, the bill that Jeff referred to earlier, that was put forward by Representative DeFazio earlier today, because of the timing, the need to do that within the next half year or so, there's a strong possibility that you could also see reauthorization tied into an economic recovery type bill, which I think would help tremendously, because I know that many in the transportation community are very concerned that reauthorization is basically due a month before the presidential election in November. And so we would very much like to see that accomplished well prior to getting into really the peak of the campaign season. But then of course, the big question still remains, and what has not been answered in Representative DeFazio's draft or with what the Senate passed last year. And that is, how do you pay for the additional investment levels that you're calling for? So that will continue to be the big question. But yeah, there's a lot of moving parts and somewhat unpredictable. But I do think it's at least encouraging to note that infrastructure does appear to be a priority and is getting quite a bit of consideration back in Washington right now.
Okay. Board, are there any questions, comments, thoughts? Well, thank you very much.
Very welcome.
We'll go on to the next item. The next item is the City of Flagstaff IGA. And this would be on pages 33 and 42 of your packet. There's no recommendation being made, but the board may want to re-adopt the IGA with the City of Flagstaff. Mr. Meilbach?
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the board, thank you. The board has already approved, the Metro Plan board has already approved this IGA, and they said, Jeff, go ahead and sign it if there aren't any material changes. I just wanted to bring it back to you. I don't feel there's a need for you to reapprove this document. The City of Flagstaff did sign it on May 19th. And really the only significant change is since Metro Plan came to agreement with Mountain Line to provide staff on loan. We just removed those clauses, those contingencies out of the IGA with the city. So it's a bit cleaner that this is really kind of a wrap-up IGA that concludes our business and transitions finances over to Metro Plan. I am really pleased with the document, and I again want to recognize and thank city staff for working through it over the past year and a half. And unless the board wants to re-adopt the IGA, I think we're good to go, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Board?
Madam Chair, Steve Peru, I think we're good as staff has indicated.
Mayor, this is Charlie. And no, if there's really not a recommendation to reapprove the IGA, I guess I'm good. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item number E. This is the Executive Director Review and Contract Considerations. You'll find this on pages 43 and 44 of your agenda. I will go ahead and kick off the conversation. As board chair, I'm recommending that the executive board update the executive director's contract to reflect Metro Plan's independence from the City of Flagstaff and as a standalone organization, and also to consider the term, salary, and benefits of the contract. We were in executive session for this conversation last month, and we can go back into executive session to get the additional information that we ask our attorney to get for us.
Madam
So
Chair,
perhaps, Mr. Peru?
if it's appropriate at this time, I would make a motion, if appropriate again, to ask the board to move into executive session.
Would there be a second on that?
Second. This is Mr. Babbitt.
Babbitt? There's been a motion made by Mr. Peru with a second by Mr. Babbitt to go into executive session. Is there any discussion?
If I may, Mayor.
Yes, who's this?
This is Brandon Kavanaugh.
Hello.
Hello. Can we specify whether this is a motion under A1 for employment discussion, or is this the A3 for legal advice, since they would need to potentially be separate votes?
Mr. Peru.
I would say, at least initially, it would be 03.
Mr. Babbitt?
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute. Yeah, I think that's fine. I will amend my, or not amend, but just reference my motion to Mr. Peru's clarification.
Would there be any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That motion would carry. Thank you. So the way we did this last time, we're going to have to lean on Rosie. Because I believe, Rosie, you removed everyone from this Zoom and put them in a waiting room. Then you made me the administrator, so then you could be removed?
Yes.
And, okay, so if we could do that now, that'd be awesome.
Chair Evans, if you don't mind, I'd like to try a breakout room today. I
Okay,
am prepared to open a breakout room with all of the executive board members and Brandon Kavanaugh. The breakout room will not be recorded, and the remainder of attendees at this meeting will remain in the main session, if that is acceptable to you.
that sounds perfect.
Okay, I'm opening the rooms now, and the rest of us will wait for you to return, and you have the ability to return to the main conference when you're ready.
Okay, thank you.
So, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I was having a little bit of distraction here. Are we staying, apologies, are we staying on here, or is there another portal we are going to?
The way I understand it is that Miss Rosie is going to put us in a different room, and
Okay.
we need to chat, and when we're ready to come back, we come back to this room.
Okay, so we don't need to do anything.
I hope not. That's the way I took it.
You might accept the request to be moved into the other room.
Okay.
I'm sending you right now.
Great. Thank you.
Unassigned. Okay, assigned here. Okay. Okay.
Reality.
Now, Rosie, that's got to be the coolest thing ever.
So sweet.
That seemed to work out pretty nice.
Yes, well, Miss Blair, I guess I learned a new thing that Zoom does. Thank you for showing us that.
You're welcome. It looks like everyone but Jesse is back.
Okay. So let's see. Is Jesse back yet, Mr. Thompson? No, we'll just give it a few more minutes, or a minute or there we go. I see Mr. Thompson on my screen. I saw Mr. Thompson.
I'm here.
Oh, there he is. Okay, so we are now back from our executive session. I'm going to pull back up the agenda real quick. There we go. And so I'd like to make a motion. First of all, thank you, staff, for allowing the board that time. Thank you, board, for the conversation. And thank you to our attorney for walking us through that. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that the executive board accept the contract as described by our, accept the changes to the contract as described by our attorney, with the caveat that the updated contract will be emailed to all board members. All board members will have the opportunity from the time it is emailed until Monday at 12 o'clock to respond if they have any substantive change they would like to see that would result in us having a meeting next Wednesday. If not, then with the board's permission, after 12 o'clock on Monday, our attorney will go ahead and finalize that contract. And then myself and Mr. Milebach will meet, discuss however we're going to do it in this virtual sense to get that contract signed, the updated contract. I believe that would be my motion.
And Mayor, and I second that.
Thank you. So I see,
Discussion?
you do have a question, but one second. There was a motion made by myself. There was a second made by Mr. Odegaard. We do have further conversation. Mr. McCarthy.
So do we need to send a copy of this to Mr. Malbec also
Yes.
at this right now?
Yes, everybody gets to see a copy of it. And then the attorney will work with Mr. Milback. If he has any substantive changes that he would like to see, then that would mean we would be coming back to have a meeting as well.
Good plan.
So there was a motion made by myself with a second by Mr. Odegaard. Is there any further discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, that motion does carry. Thank you, board. We're going to go down to item number F. This is items from our executive director, Mr. Milback.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, I was going to share my screen again, but actually, let me just get out of that. And if you would give me 1 second here. So I just have a few items. One is that we do go independent on July 1, 2020. Everything has really gone swimmingly. I was prepared for us to be having some last minute things pop up at this meeting that we had to deal with. We really haven't. And I want to thank the board for their involvement in this. I want to recognize Rosie, who's just a great asset administratively and moving things through. And of course, all of our partners, the City of Flagstaff and Mountain Line and ADOT. I mean, it really has taken everybody involved to make this work. So thank you. And I want to provide an update. There was a State Transportation Board meeting yesterday. Councilmember Odegaard and myself both spoke about the importance of the Rio de Flag project funding continuing in fiscal year 21. I also want to recognize that Supervisor Thompson raised some points about the process that the full board discussed with staff. I think with the intention of, being perhaps more communication between ADOT and affected agencies when projects are being adjusted. And I also think everybody recognizes COVID-19 was a bit of an emergency and there was a scramble to get things done. So I'm pleased to report the items are being addressed. The funding looks to be continued and the relationship with ADOT is still strong. And then there is no meeting in July. We typically schedule to have no meeting in July or December. So unless something comes up that we need a special meeting, and I know Mayor Evans alluded to the possibility of needing a special meeting on the last item, we won't be meeting again until August. And that concludes my report.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Milback. Board, are there any comments or questions based off of what Mr. Milback has presented? I do not see any, so we'll go ahead and move down to our last agenda item, which would be item number 5, closing business. Board, is there anything that you felt that needed to be said or you wanted to say that was not said during this meeting? Not seeing anything. I will go ahead then and say we will see each other most likely in August and have a great summer break. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good summer.
Thank you.
Dave and Rosie, let's go into the other meeting room.